Homeless child yells, "Don't eat that," at a rich man. What he knew stunned everyone. The TV in the corner would not shut up. Malik Turner sat on a cracked vinyl chair in the witness waiting room, sneakers gone, toes curled against cold tile. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in gray. His fingers dug into the worn leather journal pressed to his chest like it was the only solid thing left. On the TV, a smiling anchor spoke in a careful, important voice. Billionaire William Sterling narrowly survives alleged poisoning at a Midtown charity gala. Sources say a homeless black child may have saved his life. They threw his photo up on the screen. Security camera still. Clothes filthy, hair wild, eyes blown wide. A boy who looked like trouble, not like a hero. Across the bottom, comments from the station's app crawled by. Probably made it up. Street kids will do anything for money. Bet it was staged for publicity. Malik swallowed hard. The room smelled like bleach and stale coffee, but his mind was back in that ballroom. In that second when 300 rich people turned to stare at the barefoot kid who had just screamed, he did not feel like he had saved anybody. All he could see over and over was his father's face behind a wall of fire. The night 2 years ago when he had smelled something wrong and nobody had listened. The night he ran the wrong way. Now William Sterling was in a private hospital room with armed guards at the door, his name on every channel. Gregory Hamilton had been walked out of the Sterling room in handcuffs while cameras popped like fireworks. And Malik. On paper, he was still nobody, no current address, no legal guardian, just a name in a case file and a problem for child services to figure out later. And he opened the journal with shaking hands. The pages smelled like old paper and kitchen smoke. On the inside cover, in Andre Turner's looping handwriting, a note he had read 1,000 times. If you ever smell bitter almonds in food, run. That is cyanide, son. Never ignore it. Malik stared at the words until they blurred. I did not run last time, Dad, he thought. And this time, I ran into it. Outside that little room, the city buzzed with gossip and outrage, with talk of attempted murder and corporate scandal. But for Malik Turner, the disaster had started long before William Sterling ever lifted that spoon, long before a homeless child yelled, "Do not eat that," at a rich man, and shocked the world awake for a moment. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this. In America, if you play by the rules, the system protects you. William Sterling said it calmly, like a man stating gravity. A floor-to-ceiling windows glowed behind him, Manhattan spread out in winter light. His office sat near the top of the Sterling Group Tower, all glass and polished wood, the kind of space where people lowered their voices without knowing why. Gregory Hamilton stood by the desk, adjusting his cufflinks. Same custom suit, same perfect haircut, but his eyes flicked for a second toward the stack of financial reports on the credenza. "You really believe that, Uncle Will?" he asked. The question sounded casual. It was not. William looked up from the ledger he was reviewing. At 68, he had the solid posture of a man who paid trainers to keep his back straight. His white hair was trimmed short. His tie was dark, perfect Windsor knot. On the wall behind him hung framed photos. Him cutting ribbons at shelters, shaking hands with mayors, smiling beside kids holding oversized scholarship checks. "I do," he said. It has worked for me. I stayed inside the lines. I paid my taxes. I documented every donation. When you do that, you sleep at night." He did not say that he had started ahead of the line, that being a young white man with a small family loan when he opened his first restaurant made those rules easier to follow. In his mind, he had earned this skyline. The rest was noise. Every morning followed a script. 5 a.m. wake up, 10 minutes of news, 20 minutes of cardio with the private trainer who came to his penthouse. Protein shake, shower, then an hour alone with quarterly reports. He read every page, pen in hand, circling numbers, checking margins. He trusted systems, audits, lawyers, boards, compliance departments. If the rules were followed, danger stayed outside. That belief did not start in boardrooms. It started in kitchens, years earlier. Yet when a younger William choked on an unknown allergen during a private dinner, and a black chef named Andre Turner kept him alive until paramedics arrived, William had translated that night into a simple lesson. Hire good people. Follow procedure. The universe rewards that. Across town, in a narrow alley behind a discount electronics store in Hell's Kitchen, another boy clung to the same idea for different reasons. Malik Turner woke to the sound of a delivery truck backing up, the beep cutting through his sleep. He lay on flattened cardboard, wrapped in an oversized army jacket that still held the faint smell of someone else's cologne and cigarettes. His breath clouded in the January air. He sat up, blinking, and the first thing he did was reach for the journal. The leather was cracked and soft against his fingers. His father's name, Andre Turner, was pressed into the cover in faded gold. Malik slid it under his shirt, close to his skin. Only then did he stand. He checked the alley the way his father had taught him to check a kitchen line. Quick scan, corners first, then center. No one staring. No one waiting. Dumpster lids down. The city was already humming beyond the brick walls. His stomach cramped. Last real meal had been maybe 2 days ago. A church basement in Midtown. Canned beans and rice that tasted like metal and salt. He had choked it down anyway. Hunger did not care about flavor. But even now, standing on raw concrete, Malik could not bring himself to eat anything without smelling it first. It was automatic. A rule burned into him. In a kitchen, there are rules. You follow them. Everyone is safe. Andre's voice lived in his head, clear as if the man were still turning onions in a pan beside him. Malik remembered being small enough to stand on a milk crate to see the stove, his father lowering his face toward a pot. "Breathe it in," Andre had said. "Your nose is your first line of defense. Gas leaks, rotten meat, anything off. You catch it here before anybody gets hurt." 2 years ago, the night of the explosion, Malik had smelled something wrong in the Sterling Room basement. A sharp, rotten scent under the normal aroma of garlic and wine. He had told a manager. He had tugged the sleeve of a firefighter outside, words tumbling out. They had patted his shoulder, told him he was in shock, told him to sit down. He had watched his father's kitchen become a fireball 10 minutes later. Still, a part of him clung to the same belief that floated above William Sterling's tower. If I tell the right person, if I say it clearly enough, someone will listen. The system will do what it is supposed to do. That belief had dragged him to social workers who wrote his words in tiny boxes on forms. It had made him sit with a detective who stared more at the clock than at his eyes. It had kept him from giving up completely when he slipped out of his third foster home and chose the street over a locked closet. Now, walking out of the alley, he kept his head down. The city moved around him in layers. Office workers in long coats, coffee in hand, tourists with cameras, a cop car creeping past, windows up. Malik knew what he looked like to them. Thin black kid in a dirty jacket, no backpack, no adult. Trouble waiting to happen. His biggest fear was not dying out here. He had come close enough times that the idea felt almost ordinary. Falling asleep in the wrong doorway during a cold snap. Taking food from the wrong trash can. Being in the wrong bodega when someone decided to pull a gun. What kept him up, what made sweat bead on his neck even under freezing air, was the idea that if he did die, people would nod like they had seen it coming. They would say, he was always a problem. They would say, those street kids, you know where they end up. Back in the tower, William moved from numbers to names. On his desk lay a draft of the speech he would give that night at the Culinary Excellence Gala. The paper was heavy, the kind made for important words. This is it. "Well, Gregory," he said, tapping the top page, "tonight we announce the Turner Scholarship Fund. $200 million. Endowment. Full ride for kids from shelters and foster care who want to become chefs. Kids like Andre once was. Kids like the ones sleeping in our city right now. This is the legacy." Gregory smiled, all teeth and charm. "It is a big move, Uncle Will. People will talk." "They already do," William replied. "Let them talk about something that matters." He did not see the flicker that crossed Gregory's face. The quick calculation, 200 million carved out, locked away in a trust he would not control. There was a knock at the door. Linda Cho, the deputy CFO, stepped in, tablet in hand, dark hair pulled back in a low bun. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "I just wanted to flag something before tonight." William gestured for her to continue. "I went over the last set of subsidiary reports from Meridian Trust," she said. "There are inconsistencies in our accounts. Wire transfers to shell vendors that do not have physical addresses. I think Gregory is moving money around." The room tightened a fraction. Gregory laughed lightly, too quickly. Linda, we have been over this. Complex structures look messy on paper. You are reading ghosts. William raised a hand. Linda, I appreciate your diligence, he said, but Gregory manages those entities. We are in the middle of a gala day. Let us schedule a full audit review next month. No reason to panic over a few odd lines. Her jaw tensed. For a second, anger flashed in her eyes. With respect, sir, I do not think this is nothing. I did not say nothing, he replied. I said not now. Gregory is family. I trust him. If there is an issue, we will fix it by the book. She hesitated, then nodded and backed out of the room. The door clicked softly behind her. William exhaled, the moment already filed away. And he told himself he was protecting the company from unnecessary scandal, protecting jobs, protecting the philanthropic work they did. Rules, after all, were not just about punishment. They were about stability. He turned back to the speech, pen underlining a line about giving kids a fair shot in a fair system. That afternoon, in Hell's Kitchen, Malik stood outside a church on 9th Avenue and watched volunteers hand out paper bowls of soup to a line of people who looked a lot like him. The smell drifted on the wind, tomatoes, salt, something metallic underneath. He stepped closer, sniffed, and his nose told him it was safe, just cheap ingredients and too much heat. He took a bowl, murmured thanks, and moved to the curb. Before he lifted the spoon, he paused. The same reflex. The same rule. In a kitchen, there are rules. You follow them. Everyone is safe. Out there, beyond the church door, beyond the alley where he slept, he still believed there was some kind of order. And some way the world would make sense if he could just find the right person to hear him. High above him, in an office that caught the last of the winter sun, William Sterling smoothed the front of his tuxedo and glanced at the print dinner menu for the last time. French onion soup, first course, credited in small print as inspired by a recipe from the late chef Andre Turner. He felt a swell of satisfaction. Tonight would be the night his life's work finally snapped into a clean, heroic narrative. The self-made restaurateur turned billionaire, the philanthropist who put real money where his mouth was, the man who played by the rules and used the system to help those who could not. At least, that is what he believed, until a barefoot homeless child would scream across a ballroom, tearing his illusion apart with 3 words. Do not eat that. Gregory Hamilton's penthouse was the kind of place magazines photographed. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art that needed insurance, a bar cart with bottles that cost more than most people's rent. Tonight, it felt like a cage. He stood at the window in his shirt sleeves, tie yanked loose, looking down at the river. C'est cher. His reflection worried back at him. 45, still handsome, still lean, every part of him curated like his Instagram feed. But his eyes looked older tonight, edges frayed. On the marble island, his phone buzzed again. Answer it, he muttered, before he sends a SWAT team. He swiped, put it on speaker. William's voice filled the kitchen, calm but carrying steel. Midnight, Gregory. Either you show me where the money is, or I call the FBI. I am done waiting. Uncle Will, I told you, the transfers are strategic. I just need more time to explain the structure. You have had plenty of time. Midnight. The line clicked dead. Gregory stared at the phone as if it had insulted him. 80 million. That was the number the audit had circled in red. And it had not felt like that much when it leaked out in pieces. A renovation on the Hamptons house here, a quiet poker debt there, a bad investment in a can't-lose crypto fund a friend swore by, a wire to cover a margin call, another to pay off a man who did not write receipts. He poured himself a drink with a shaking hand. 12-year single malt. Neat. The glass clinked against his teeth when he lifted it. He could not picture himself in orange scrubs. He could not imagine trading this view for a concrete wall, trading his custom suits for state issue. The worst part was the thought of people talking about him, the same board members who had nodded at every joke of his, who had fought to sit next to him at dinners. He heard their voices in his head already. He always lived beyond his means. You know those second-generation types. They never appreciate what they have. They would dissect him like a cautionary tale. They would call him greedy, reckless. No one would say he deserved the money. No one would talk about the nights he stayed in the office until 2 a.m., the deals he closed, the growth he drove. His phone rang again. This time it was a different name. Ethan, he said, forcing his voice steady. Greg, the lawyer said, skipping hello. I read the preliminary audit. You are in deep. You know that, right? It is not as bad as it looks. It is exactly as bad as it looks. Listen to me. As your friend, not your attorney, you need to cut a deal. Go to William before midnight. Admit what you did. Return whatever you can. Cooperate fully. You might avoid prison time, or at least get a reduced sentence. Gregory laughed, short and bitter. Reduced sentence. Do you have any idea what that sounds like to me? I know you're scared of losing your status, but prison is not theoretical, Greg. It is real. And they are not country clubs. You are not built for that. So your advice, Gregory said, staring at his reflection, is to march into his office, confess to every creative move I have ever made, and hope he decides to be merciful. Yes, before he decides the FBI will be. And if I do that, what is left of me, Ethan? I am done. No one hires the guy who robbed his own uncle. There was a pause. You did rob him, Ethan said quietly. You know that, right? The word hung there, ugly and accurate. Gregory ended the call without saying goodbye. He stood in the silence of his perfect kitchen, listening to his own breathing. The clock over the stove ticked. 10:14. If he dies before the audit, the FBI never gets involved. The thought came uninvited like a pop-up ad. He tried to swat it away. It came back stronger. If he dies, the audit freezes. The company goes into mourning. Everyone is too busy handling succession, estate taxes, chaos. The old man's last days are of a heart attack at a charity dinner, not of calling the feds on his own blood. He walked to the pantry, opened the door. On the second shelf, behind a row of organic olive oil, sat a small, dark glass bottle. It was not labeled. It did not need to be. An old contact in pest control had gotten it for him years ago, part of a harebrained plan to rid a property of a rodent problem cheaply. He had never used it. The problem had been solved with professional services instead. The bottle had stayed, a forgotten piece of overkill. Now, when he picked it up, it felt heavy in his palm, heavier than glass and liquid should. I am not a killer, he told the empty room. He told himself he was just considering options. Across the city, another man's decision was replaying in a boy's head. And Malik sat in a subway car that rattled under Midtown, the journal open on his lap. People crammed the seats around him, headphones in, eyes on phones, bags pressed tight to their bodies to keep him from getting too close. The train lurched, and his thumb slid along the margin of a page where his father's handwriting slanted sharper than usual. If you ever smell bitter almonds, you run, or you make them stop. Do not be silent. He could still smell that night. The mix of things, onion, garlic, bleach, gas, that odd sharpness under it all. He had tried to tell them. There is something wrong, 10-year-old Malik had insisted, tugging at the paramedic's sleeve while the Sterling room burned. It smelled wrong before it blew. It smelled like rotten eggs and metal and something bad. You are in shock, kid, the man had said, barely looking down. You saw something no kid should see. Your nose is just playing tricks. Later, in a gray office with a woman from Child Services, he had repeated his story. Gas, smell, fear. Sometimes when we are traumatized, our brains mix up details, she had said gently, eyes soft in a way that felt like pity, not belief. We are going to get you somewhere safe now, okay? The detective had been worse. He had not even put down his pen. Look, Malik, he said. The fire investigators say it was a faulty line. It happens. I know you want this to make sense, but sometimes accidents are just accidents. Every time Malik raised his voice after that, someone labeled it. Overreacting, trauma, acting out, seeking attention. He learned to shut up. He learned slowly and painfully that in the eyes of most adults he met, especially the ones with badges and clipboards, he was not a credible witness. He was a black foster kid with a dead father and a vivid imagination. For 2 years, whenever he smelled anything strange, and he looked around first. If there were no flames, no smoke alarms, no screaming, he swallowed it. Better to be quiet than to be called crazy. The train screeched into Times Square. He closed the journal, held it against his chest. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in. On the platform, volunteers from a church group handed out slices of cheese pizza on paper plates. The smell drifted through the crowd, hot cheese and cheap tomato sauce. His stomach clenched. He took a slice from a woman with kind eyes. Before he bit, he lifted it to his nose. It was habit, but tonight, it felt like something more, like a line in the sand. He thought of his father covered in soot, wiping a smear off Malik's cheek with his thumb. "You smell better than any man I have ever trained," Andre had said with a grin. "One day, that nose is going to save lives, maybe even mine." He had been wrong about that last part, or maybe Malik had failed him. Either way, the sentence had lodged in Malik's chest like a splinter. "This time," Malik whispered under his breath, "if I smell something wrong, I am not shutting up. I do not care who thinks I am crazy." He took a bite of the pizza, the grease burning the roof of his mouth. It was bad, but not dangerous. There was a difference. He trusted that difference again, suddenly, fiercely. In the gleaming kitchen of the Sterling room, hours later, Gregory stood where Andre once had. The line danced around him, servers moving trays, chefs calling orders. Steam curled from a long row of bowls waiting at the pass, each filled with rich brown broth and a soft blanket of melted cheese. His hand slipped into his pocket, feeling the cold shape of the bottle. His throat went dry. He could walk away right now. He could call Ethan, tell him he had been stupid even thinking about it, show up at William's office and take the hit. Lose the penthouse, the cars, the invitations, maybe keep his freedom. Or he could tilt his hand just slightly and then pour a few invisible drops into one particular bowl. The one with the gold rim, the one meant for the man who had promised to call the FBI on his own family before midnight. He told himself it would look natural. Men William's age had heart attacks at dinners all the time. The stress, the rich food, no one would ask too many questions. Not really. His fingers closed around the bottle. Across the river, in a narrow alley lit by a single flickering bulb, Malik finished the last bite of pizza and licked his fingers clean. He pressed the journal flat against his palm and looked up at the slice of sky visible between buildings. "Just tell me if I'm supposed to do something," he whispered, not sure who he was talking to. His father, God, himself. The city answered with sirens in the distance and the low hum of traffic. That night, both men crossed a line, one in a kitchen of polished steel, and one in a city that had already tried to erase him. One out of greed, one out of faith. Only one of them would survive it. The Sterling room had never looked richer. Crystal chandeliers poured warm light over a sea of black tuxedos and glittering gowns. White tablecloths rippled across round tables, each one crowned with low vases of white roses and tall, thin candles. A jazz quartet played in the corner, the stand-up bass vibrating softly through the marble floor. Waiters moved in precise lines, silver trays balanced on gloved hands. On one wall, an illuminated screen looped images of smiling children in soup kitchens and after-school programs. The words, "Sterling Foundation Gala," glowing in gold script. A silent auction table near the entrance displayed framed vacation packages, courtside tickets, a signed chef's jacket in a glass case. From the service hallway behind the ballroom, the whole thing sounded like a different language. Laughter, clinking glass. In the muffled swell of applause, Malik pressed himself against the wall, the too big jacket hanging off one shoulder, bare feet cold on the concrete. He had slipped in with a group of delivery guys an hour earlier, blending into shadows and racks of linen. The plan was simple. Find the kitchen trash, see if anything edible had been tossed earlier, then get out before security noticed. Then he heard the voice. 2 years ago, we lost one of the finest chefs this city has ever known. A man who understood that food is not just business, it is dignity. My friend, Andre Turner. Malik went still. The words floated through the cracked service door, along with the sound of applause. He stepped closer, just enough to see a slice of the ballroom. There, at the center table, under the biggest chandelier, stood William Sterling in a black tux, hand resting on a polished podium. He looked smaller in person than on TV, but the room bent around him anyway. "Tonight," William continued, "and we honor his legacy with the Turner Scholarship Fund. $200 million dedicated to kids who grew up like he did, like too many in our city do now, in neighborhoods where talent is abundant, but opportunity is not." Malik's chest tightened. He did not know whether to be angry or grateful. They were applauding a man they let burn, a man whose son they had lost between case files. A line of servers moved past him, pushing through the swinging door in formation. Each carried a wide silver tray, and on each tray sat 12 bowls of French onion soup, Gruyere bubbling golden at the surface, steam rising in soft tendrils. One tray brushed within inches of Malik's face. The world narrowed to a point. The sounds of the band, the clapping, the rustle of silk dresses all fell away. Malik's pupils widened. His lungs paused halfway through a breath. And every nerve ending he had seemed to move to the bridge of his nose. Onion first, sweet and dark, caramelized to the edge of burning. Beef stock, deep and salty. The nutty fat of the cheese. A hint of thyme and dry sherry. It was almost perfect. Almost. Underneath, so faint it could have been imagined if he had not been trained to catch ghosts. There it was. A hard, bitter note. Not quite almond, not quite metal. Something sharp and wrong cutting through the warmth. His father's voice rose up, louder than the jazz, louder than the crowd. This smell, you never ever ignore it, son. People die when others pretend not to notice. He saw the basement edge of their old apartment. Andre tapping a jar of crushed almonds under his nose, then a tiny vial of diluted chemical from a chef friend who had worked in a lab once. Bitter almonds is a warning. Most people cannot even smell it. You can. That is your gift. Promise me if you ever catch it in food, you run or you make them stop. The tray kept moving. The bowl slid through the doorway, out into the glow. Malik's heart hammered. For a second, he could not move. He thought of what happened the last time he trusted his nose. The men who told him he was traumatized. The woman who wrote his words down and filed them away. The way they all looked at him like a story to be managed, not a witness. If I yell, they will drag me out, call the cops, maybe lock me up. If I stay quiet, that man dies in front of all of them. He looked down at his bare feet, black against the dull concrete. Then he shoved the service door with his shoulder and ran. The sudden view of the ballroom hit him like light after a tunnel. Marble floor. Hundreds of faces turned toward the stage. The band had shifted to something soft, while guests settled back into their seats. At the head table, a server was setting down a bowl with a subtle gold rim in front of William Sterling. The billionaire sat, napkin in his lap, smiling politely at the woman next to him. And the spoon was inches from his hand when the silence cracked. "Do not eat that." Malik's voice came out higher than he meant, scraped raw from disuse. Heads turned. Conversation snapped off mid-sentence. The band stumbled and stopped. He did not stop. "Sir!" he yelled again, his voice bouncing off the vaulted ceiling. "Do not eat that soup." He sprinted down the side aisle, the oversized jacket flapping around him, heels slapping the polished stone. A couple in formal wear recoiled as he passed, the woman grabbing her clutch tighter. "Hey!" someone shouted. "Where is security?" Two guards in black suits broke from the walls and moved toward him. Malik zigzagged between chairs, eyes locked on the glint of the spoon as William lifted it, confused by the commotion. Malik reached the edge of the head table as the first guard caught his arm. He twisted hard, wrenching free long enough to plant his hands on the linen and drag himself closer. "Please," he gasped. "Please do not eat that, as it is poisoned." The room went dead. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was Malik's breathing and the faint hiss of candles. William's hand stayed suspended, the spoonful of onion and broth trembling. Up close, Malik could see the age spots on the back of it. He could see the lines around the man's eyes, the subtle confusion there. Security slammed Malik's shoulders, forcing him to his knees. He heard one of them mutter, "He is going out now." "Who let that kid in here?" A woman near the front whispered, horrified. "Is he on drugs?" Someone else murmured. At a table to the side, an older white couple leaned toward each other. The man shook his head. "This is exactly why we need stricter vagrancy laws," he said. "You let them hang around Midtown long enough, they end up here." Malik stared up at William, fighting against the hands holding him down. "Why, son?" William asked quietly. His voice cut through the whispers. Why should I not eat it?" Malik's mouth was dry. His whole body shook, but his words came out clear. "It smells like bitter almonds," he said. "My dad taught me that is poison." The room reacted in waves. Some guests laughed, high and brittle. "Oh, please," a woman in diamonds said loudly. "Now we are doing homeless food critics at charity dinners. What a stunt. This is ridiculous." A man in a tux near the back said, "William, do not let this ruin your night. He is a kid looking for attention. He probably wants to go viral." Gregory stood up so fast his chair skidded. "Uncle Will, do not entertain this," he said, voice sharp. "He is a homeless kid. He could have come in here with God knows what in his system. He probably wants a payout. This is exactly the kind of thing tabloids eat up." William did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Malik's, reading past the dirt, past the wild hair, to the raw terror sitting there. "Emma," he called, still calm. "Bring the kit." From the back of the room, and a woman in a dark suit was already moving. Emma Rodriguez, head of security, carried a small black case in one hand, radio at her shoulder. "Sir, we do not need to make a scene," Gregory hissed. "If you legitimize this, you give every grifter in New York a playbook." William lowered the spoon slowly until it rested back in the bowl. He set it down. "If a child runs barefoot into a room like this and risks getting tackled to tell me not to eat something," he said, "I'm going to listen for 30 seconds. Emma snapped on gloves and opened the case on the table, revealing a slim device and several sealed vials. "Standard detection kit," she said quietly. "Food, liquids, air samples. We use it for high-profile events." She dipped a small swab into the surface of the soup, then slid it into a cartridge and inserted it into the device. A tiny screen lit up. A bar began to crawl across, searching. The ballroom held its breath. Camera phones lifted, some discreetly, some not at all. The jazz musicians stood frozen, instruments hanging from their shoulders. "Mr. Sterling," Gregory said, voice rising. "This is insane. You are letting a street kid play games with your life and your reputation." A pale blue line appeared on the screen. Emma's face changed. "Positive for cyanide," she said. "It is there." Chaos hit like a second sound system turned on full volume. Guests pushed back from tables, chairs scraping. Someone screamed. A waiter dropped an entire tray of champagne flutes, the crash of glass setting off another wave of panic. People surged toward the exits, tripping over gowns, shouting, "Oh my God, he is serious. They almost killed him. Get me out of here, now." Emma barked orders into her radio, calling for lockdown procedures. Doors that had been open for donors and socialites now slammed shut under the hands of security guards. Malik felt the hands on his shoulders loosen for a second as the guards turned, instinctively moving to shield the billionaire. He stayed where he was, knees aching on the cold marble, watching the world tilt. The Sterling Room, the jewel of William's empire, had gone from temple of control to crime scene in under a minute. The gala that was supposed to cement his legacy had snapped into something else entirely, a headline with the words "attempted murder" and "billionaire" in the same sentence. Through the noise, William did something strange. He did not run. He did not clutch his chest or demand a stronger drink. He looked down at the small boy still kneeling at his table. Malik looked up, chest heaving, eyes shining with fear and something like defiance. Then William lifted his gaze across the room to Gregory, who was no longer speaking. Sweat shone on Gregory's forehead. His face had gone from flushed red to chalk white. For the first time in decades, William Sterling realized he was not the one in control. A homeless child was. By morning, the video had a name: "Homeless Kid Saves Billionaire." Clips of Malik bursting into the ballroom, yelling, "Don't eat that," replayed on every channel, remixed with dramatic music, slowed down, captioned. On some edits, he was an angel in a ragged jacket. On others, he was a punchline. Talk show hosts leaned into their cameras. "Is he a hero or a hoax? We will let you decide." Comments poured in underneath. "Guardian angel. That kid is braver than half the adults I know. Probably staged. Rich guy PR stunt. Bet he made up half that story. Kids like him always exaggerate abuse to get money." Malik saw his own face looping on the TV in the hospital family lounge, eyes wild, mouth open mid-shout. He hated it. He had not done it to be a clip. He had done it because his father had taught him to smell danger. And this time, someone had finally listened. Outside the Sterling Room, as police locked down the building, a woman with a city badge had arrived, tablet in hand, sensible shoes clicking on marble. "Malik Turner," she asked briskly. "I am with Child Services. We need to get you back into placement." The word placement made his stomach drop. He saw the closet door again, closed from the outside, a strip of light under it. He took a step back. "I am not going back there," he said, voice shaking. "You are not locking me up again." William stepped between them before the social worker could answer. "He is under my guardianship tonight," he said. "You want him. Talk to my lawyers in the morning. Right now, he is not going anywhere except somewhere safe." In the quiet of his penthouse later, Malik stood on a thick rug, afraid to move. The bed in the guest room looked like something from a commercial, all white pillows and soft light. The bathroom was bigger than the shelter room he had shared with 6 other boys last winter. He slept badly the first night, and the second. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw a flame rolling across the ceiling, heard glass shattering, smelled gas and burnt fat. Twice he woke up on the floor, having slid off the bed in his sleep, his body seeking the hard ground it trusted. He did not belong here. The art on the walls, the view of the city, the sound of nothing but air conditioning at 3 in the morning. It all felt rented, borrowed, like someone could show up any second with a clipboard and tell him time was up. During the day, when reporters camped outside the building and camera vans lined the curb, Malik hid in the kitchen. That was the one room that made sense. Stainless steel, a gas range, a refrigerator humming softly. On the 3rd day, while William took yet another call with lawyers, Malik cracked eggs into a pan, added salt, a pinch of smoked paprika, a little shredded cheese from the back of the fridge. The smell filled the space. William followed it like a rope. What are you making?" he asked, stopping in the doorway. "Just eggs," Malik said, suddenly self-conscious. "The way my dad did." "I can stop if you do not want me touching your stuff." William picked up a fork, took a bite off the plate without asking. For a moment, his eyes closed. "He used this spice," he said quietly. "Paprika." He said it made cheap eggs feel expensive. Malik nodded, throat tight. "He wrote it in here," he said, tapping the journal on the counter. "He wrote everything." At night, after Malik fell into uneasy sleep, William sat alone in his study with that journal open and a thick folder of internal audit reports beside it. Andre's neat handwriting detailed vendor names, account numbers, transfers that did not make sense. The numbers lined up with the red flags Linda had tried to show him. It was betrayal twice over. Gregory, the boy he had brought into the business, had been bleeding him out in small cuts for years. And the system he had built. Well, the board, the compliance officers, the external auditors had all missed it, or pretended not to see. Meridian Trust Holdings appeared again and again, a web of shell companies and routing entities. When William handed the journal and the reports to Detective Sarah Mitchell, she whistled under her breath. "You know who sits on the oversight committee for Meridian?" she asked. "Richard Blackstone," William said slowly. The name tasted bitter. "He has been my friend for 20 years, godfather to Gregory's first kid. You are telling me he is involved." "I am telling you his signature is on a lot of documents that move dirty money around," she replied. "We will follow it." Pressure mounted from every side as the days turned into weeks. One board member called from a ski lodge in Colorado. "William, for the love of God, do not burn the whole house down over this. Quietly retire Gregory. Settle with the feds. Call it a tragic misunderstanding. And if you dig too deep, you take us all down in the wreckage." A partner at their law firm sounded more polite, but said the same thing in better words. "Protect the brand. Control the narrative. Think of the shareholders." On the other side, Child Services sent emails and left voicemails, increasingly sharp. "We need to review Mr. Turner's placement. It is highly irregular for a billionaire to simply declare himself guardian. We are concerned about boundaries and appropriate care." When Malik spoke to a local reporter once outside the courthouse after an interview and mentioned being locked in closets and ignored when he reported abuse, people in that department took it personally. They issued a statement about ongoing improvements and isolated oversights, clearly more worried about liability than about the kid who had just exposed all of it on camera. Online, the narrative kept twisting. For every person who wrote, "Protect that boy at all costs," there was another calling him a liar. And he is too articulate to have grown up homeless. Where did he get that journal anyway? His story is too neat. Smells like a PR team. Malik tried not to read them, but they seeped in. He would sit on the floor of the guest room with the journal open and hear those voices in his head. "You are making it up. You just want money. You are not credible." One afternoon, as snow drifted outside the penthouse windows, Sarah Mitchell arrived with a thick state file tucked under her arm and a look on her face that meant nothing good. She sat across from William and Malik at the long dining table, flipped open her notebook, and got straight to it. "The case is not just about one poisoning anymore," she said. "We have enough from your father's journal, the audits, and the financial trail to open a full homicide investigation into the kitchen explosion 2 years ago, Malik. This is a murder case now." William's jaw clenched. Malik's hand tightened on the edge of his chair. "And Malik," she added, looking the boy directly in the eye, "you are at the center of it. You are not just the kid who saved a billionaire's life. You are the key witness in the deaths they thought they got away with." There it was. No one at that table could back out or downplay or settle quietly anymore. Whatever happened next would drag all of them the rest of the way into the truth. The interview room was small enough that every breath felt shared. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making Malik's brown skin look gray. A recorder on the table blinked red. "Start from the day of the fire," Detective Sarah Mitchell said. "All of it." Malik stared at his hands for a second, then lifted his eyes. "I smelled it before it happened," he said. "The gas, it was wrong. I told one of the managers, the guy with the red tie. He said, 'Nothing to worry about, kid. Go sit down.' Outside, I told a firefighter. He said I was in shock. After, in that office with the lady from Child Services, I tried again. She wrote it down as trauma narrative and moved on." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped for 2 years. "They all heard me," he said. "No one listened." Sarah slid the journal toward him. "Show me what your dad wrote the day before." Malik flipped pages with careful fingers until he found the one with his father's handwriting slanting hard. "Found proof Gregory has been stealing. He threatened me. If I leave now, I leave my crew standing on a ticking bomb. Better, I stay and watch." Malik read it twice, the meaning sinking in. "He knew," Malik whispered. "He knew he could get killed, and he still went in. He was not just in the wrong place. He stayed on purpose. He died trying to keep everyone else alive." Across the table, William's face tightened. His voice came out low. "All my scholarships, my donations, all the speeches I gave about protecting people," he said. "And I could not protect the one man who literally kept me alive 15 years ago. I trusted Gregory. I trusted Richard. I trusted a board full of rich friends who told me everything was fine, and I believed them because it was easier." Malik looked at him, something hard and clear in his eyes. "If I had walked into that firehouse in a private school blazer instead of a thrift store jacket," he said, "they would have believed me the first time. You know that, right? This is not just about me being a kid. It is about me being a black kid with no address." The words hung there, heavy and true. For the first time, Malik understood what his father had really been training him for. Not just to cook, but to survive in a world that decided who counted before they even opened their mouths. William understood something too. Charity wrote checks, but it did not fix a system that treated kids like Malik as background noise until they stumbled into a crime scene. As Sarah closed her notebook, "This case is not just about a billionaire almost dying," she said quietly. "It is about how many times we let kids like Malik scream into the void and called it noise." The room went silent, and the question none of them said out loud pressed in from every wall. How many Maliks had they walked past already, pretending not to hear? The courtroom felt colder than outside. Malik sat straight in the witness box, right hand still tingling from the oath. Across from him, Gregory Hamilton, Chu, and Richard Blackstone sat at the defense table in orange jumpsuits, wrists chained. Malik remembered seeing both men in glossy magazine photos, all cufflinks and champagne. The contrast made his stomach twist. "Mr. Turner," the defense attorney said, circling, "you have been homeless for nearly 2 years. You have a history of trauma. Is it possible your memory is, let us say, unreliable?" Malik met his eyes. "Yeah, I remember the smell of gas the night my dad died," he said. "Methane and burnt metal. I remember telling a manager, a firefighter, a social worker. They all told me I was in shock. I remember the soup at the gala. Beef stock, caramelized onions, Gruyere, thyme, sherry, and a faint bitter almond note on only one bowl. Cyanide releases that when it is heated. My dad taught me that. The test kit proved it. That is not trauma. That is chemistry." The courtroom murmured. The lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to push back with. When the verdicts came, the air seemed to thicken. "Osson." The foreperson stood, voice steady. "On the charge of murder in the first degree of Andre Turner, we find the defendant Gregory Hamilton guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of William Sterling, guilty. On the charges of embezzlement and fraud, guilty. Gregory stared straight ahead, face blank. For the first time since Malik had known his name, there was no performance left. And for the defendant Richard Blackstone, the foreperson continued, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charges of racketeering and conspiracy to defraud, guilty. The judge spoke of sentences and statutes, of life without parole and decades in federal prison. The real punishment sat heavier. Their names, once traded like currency in boardrooms, would now be shorthand for a different story. Case studies in white-collar crime finally dragged into daylight. Beside Malik, William sat rigid. He had lost a nephew and a friend, but what hurt worse was knowing they had used his trust as cover. The cameras caught the moment he whispered, almost to himself, "This is the bill for all the times I assumed my world was safe just because it felt comfortable to me." For Malik, the price had been paid in repetition. He had told the worst night of his life so many times he could feel the words wearing grooves in his throat. In the courtroom, to reporters on the steps, to therapists in soft chairs. He had given up anonymity so his father would not be remembered as an accident report. Outside, strangers wanted pictures with him, called him hero, tagged him in posts. He smiled sometimes, but inside, he knew the cost. His story no longer belonged only to him. A week after sentencing, the Sterling Room reopened quietly. No press, no gala. William walked Malik through the kitchen before service, the clang of pots and hiss of burners oddly gentle. On one wall, under a small spotlight, hung a framed white chef coat. Andre Turner stitched over the pocket in black thread. Malik stepped up to it and laid his palm flat against the glass. "We got them, Dad," he said softly, "but it still does not bring you back." The hum of the kitchen wrapped around him. Cooks called times, stock simmered. Somewhere in the dining room, a guest laughed. Life moved on, but not in the same shape. In the end, everyone paid something. Money could be replaced, reputations could be rebuilt, but a father, a childhood, a sense of safety, that was the price no verdict could refund. 1 year later, the boy who once slept on cardboard wore his name on his chest, M. Turner. It was stitched in black thread on the front of a white chef coat that actually fit him now. Malik moved through the Sterling Room kitchen with a calm that surprised even him, sliding between line cooks, tasting sauces, wiping a smear off a plate with the back of his spoon. He still went to school during the day, real classes with real homework, not just worksheets shoved at him in overcrowded rooms. 3 afternoons a week he came here, clocked in, and learned. Knife skills, timing, how to keep a kitchen from falling apart when tickets stacked up. The place that once swallowed his father whole had become the place he was learning to live. On the wall, next to Andre's framed chef coat, hung a new plaque, the Andre Turner Scholarship. Underneath, just smaller letters, because talent lives everywhere, opportunity does not. The scholarship fund had paid for 12 kids so far, kids from shelters and group homes, to start culinary programs. The mobile culinary program, Malik's favorite piece, rolled into churches, community centers, public schools with underfunded cafeterias, bringing portable stoves and crates of fresh food. On Tuesday nights, Malik stood in a church basement in Harlem, a row of teenagers in front of him, cutting boards and dull knives laid out on folding tables. Steam clung to the low ceiling. Someone's little brother chased a kicked ball in the corner. "First thing," Malik said, holding up an onion, "you are going to cry. That is fine. Crying does not mean you stop working. Second thing, your past does not disqualify you from the table. It just means your story is more interesting when you get there." A girl with braids rolled her eyes. But she smiled as she did it. "Is that like on a poster or something?" she asked. "Not yet," Malik said. "Maybe one day." They laughed, and the sound bounced around the room, warm and alive. William showed up sometimes, but not to make speeches. He sat in the back on a metal chair with a paper plate of whatever the kids had cooked, listening. At other times, he squeezed himself into circles at youth shelters, not as the billionaire savior, but as the old guy who finally understood he had a lot more to learn than to say. "Charity writes checks," he told Malik once as they washed dishes side by side after a workshop. "Justice changes structures. I spent a long time confusing the two." Malik had just shrugged, soap suds up to his wrists. "Good thing you have time left to fix it," he said. He still woke up some nights with the taste of smoke in his mouth. Sirens still made his shoulders jump before his brain caught up. Therapy was not a magic wand. And it was slow work, telling the same story in a room where someone actually believed him, and then learning how to tell other stories too. But he did not think of himself as the invisible homeless kid anymore. He was the one holding the door open, waving other kids through. The world had not turned into a movie ending because two rich men went to prison. Comment sections were still cruel. Systems were still slow to change. There were still social workers who missed things and cops who did not listen. The difference was people had one less excuse. They had seen what happened when a child, everyone had agreed did not matter, turned out to be the only one paying attention. On a rainy Saturday at a community center in Queens, the circle closed in a way Malik did not expect. The mobile program had set up 6 portable burners. Kids chopped vegetables while parents filled out job applications at tables along the wall. And a heavyset man in a faded work shirt stood in line with a styrofoam bowl of soup, chatting with a friend. A little girl in an oversized hoodie, maybe 9, stood near the serving table watching. She took a step forward, sniffed the pot, then the bowl. Her nose wrinkled. "This does not smell right," she said. "I would not eat that." A couple of staff members froze, trading looks, then moved to the stove. They checked the date on the stock, lifted lids, sniffed. Under the steam and salt and canned tomatoes, there was a sourness that did not belong. They dumped the batch before it hit the tables. Later, in the walk-in, someone found the cracked lid on a container, the spoiled base that had almost slipped through. Malik watched the little girl from across the room. She caught his eye, suddenly embarrassed. "Sorry," she said. "I did not mean to mess it up. It just smelled weird." He shook his head. "You did not mess it up," he told her. "You just saved a bunch of people from getting sick." She grinned, a quick flash of teeth, and then ran back to her friends. He stood there for a second, feeling something settle in his chest. Andre had taught him to trust his nose. Malik had used it to save a man and crack open a crime. Now a girl whose name he did not even know was using hers to protect a room full of strangers. Legacy did not always look like big buildings and named programs. Sometimes it was a kid sniffing a bowl and saying out loud what everyone else was too busy or too comfortable to notice. Here is the quiet truth under all the headlines and courtroom drama. Justice is not just prison time and press conferences. It is deciding that when someone like Malik speaks up, you do not roll your eyes and call it noise. It is understanding that visibility and dignity live in the same space. You cannot have one without the other. So the question is not whether a billionaire almost died at a gala. That part makes good TV, then fades. The real question is how many Maliks are out there right now? And in shelters and alleys and overcrowded apartments, yelling, "Do not eat that," about the things our society keeps trying to swallow. Broken schools, dirty water, dangerous neighborhoods, systems that leak gas long before they blow. How many times have we called those warnings drama, attitude, a phase? How many times have we changed the channel instead of changing anything real? A room full of rich people once ignored the danger in a bowl of soup. A homeless child did not. In the echo of his warning, the world was given a choice. Keep pretending not to smell the poison, or finally, listen. If Malik's story hit something in you, do not let it stop when the video ends. Share this story with someone who thinks their voice does not matter. Drop your own experience in the comments if you have ever been dismissed, or if you once ignored someone you should have heard. Hit like so this reaches more people who need the reminder that worth is not measured in dollars or zip codes. And if you want more stories that push you to look twice at the people the world steps around, subscribe to this channel. Somewhere out there right now is another kid like Malik, another warning we are not hearing yet. The next time someone you are used to looking past says, "Do not eat that," do not just laugh and move on. Listen.